Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Courageous Choice. I'm super excited this morning because I have my good friend Devin Hughes with us. Devin is a captivating speaker, author, and culture expert. He helps leaders drive growth and engagement by aligning workforce culture with success. He's done this for over 20 years with experience in conflict resolution, generational differences, and culture change. And he's the author of 21 books that has is spoken in over 15 countries. He lives here in San Diego near me with his wife, 4 daughters, and their rescue dogs, which, is dear to my heart. So, Devin, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super uber excited to be here with you.
You and I talk about this stuff, like, in private at dinner or whatever, but, I was excited to be able to kinda have this conversation with you, here in live with our audience. So, one of the things that we're talking about is courage. This is about the courageous choice, and I know that you've had many iterations within your career where you could probably talk about courage and reflect on points of courage. But I'd love to maybe start with, what was the most courageous choice you've ever made?
Yeah. In a professional sense, I think it was going out to be an entrepreneur because, like most of us, I had the standard script. You go to college, you do the internship, you get a job, you try to get promoted, you do that song and dance, which is great. And then I got to an inflection point, and maybe not unlike a lot of people, I'm like, is this it? I got more juice in the berry. Do I have to settle? And so I just decided to take all the aggregate experience, good cultures, bad cultures, indifferent cultures, and go out and create a boutique business around that and be an entrepreneur, roughly many, many years ago. So I think that was probably the biggest courageous thing that I did professionally at the time.
Yeah, and going on your own, I mean, you weren't in, like, HR specifically. You came up through sales, is that right?
Yeah, I was on the commercial side, so I never worked in HR. Although I partnered with HR, which is why I have a strong affinity towards it because I worked in organizations, and I'm generalizing here a bit, where often HR was sitting at the kids' table. They weren't really a partner. There was no budget, no resources. The only time we used HR is when we didn't want to handle it ourselves, when we had layoffs or the hard conversations, or the manager didn't really want to do it. Then we brought in HR like the cavalry. And I'm like, did HR really get into it all the years to just do that, to be the eh? So at the time, unbeknownst to me, I thought there was a lot of value in partnering in HR. And so when I came on the other side, it was natural for me. And so that's why there's a natural affinity to me, why I'm so fascinated with the space. You and I connected at different, whether it's SHRM or other HR events, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm gonna go there. You said on the professional side, the most courageous choice you ever made was to go out on your own. What would you answer if you were answering on the personal side?
Yeah, I think on the personal side, it was a lot of choices. I mean, um, for example, you heard my bio and I've written a few books. Well, most people don't know that I'm neurodiverse, that I couldn't read until I was in barely fifth or sixth grade. So I was in special ed, literally special ed. And so writing a book was really hard, and a lot of demons coming out, and self-doubt and shame and catharsis and all the stuff, trauma that I had as a kid. And then when I got on the other side, it was amazing, but, there's a lot of baggage and trauma in my story, so I think being comfortable with that, was, I would say, in the personal side, one of my most courageous things.
That's super courageous. Thanks for sharing that. I was in the audience when you were, being one of the keynotes and sharing your story in regards to that and what people don't know, right? We kinda make assumptions about people, and we put them in a box, and we see success or not success or whatever we see, and then make a bunch of assumptions. When you think about leadership today, and that's really your expertise, you're helping organizations build leaders, have effective leadership. Obviously, leaders are driving culture. What are some of the trends or things that you're thinking about when it comes to leadership courage today?
Yeah, so, whether you have 1 year in leadership or 40, you have not led in the current environment. right? So I don't care how many certifications, how many classes, how many graduate degrees you had. So you got to be a student again. And so I'm constantly learning and evolving and twisting. And then again, regardless of where you sit, there's a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. And so to answer your question specifically, I think one of the challenges right now is we got 4 to 5 generations in the workforce. Right. I grew up in an era when my iPad was a typewriter. My mobile phone was was a payphone. My first Zoom call was the Brady Bunch. When TV dinners were apropos, when we roller skated, and I'm dating myself, and when we went to the mall and hung out. I mean, that's my era. But then we have other people who are digital natives who came out of the womb and mom and dad handed them a smartphone. And there's no judgment in that statement other than we had very different experiences when we're all trying to coalesce in a workforce with racial and social justice and economic and uncertainty and all the other stuff that's going on in the world. And at the end of the day, we're trying to figure out how we create, an environment where people can thrive, belong, et cetera, and drive outcome. So all that to say, from a leadership standpoint, how do you get human beings to coalesce in the time of uncertainty? Where if you look at the Gallup data, I just was looking at the other day about the state of the work report from Gallup 2025. It was like roughly that only 31 to 32% of employees right now are engaged at work.
It's kinda devastating, actually, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So think about that. Wherever you're listening to this right now, just imagine out of the 100 people that come to work today, only 32 of them are actively, engaged. Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point around, the different generations and the different perspectives, it's not so much like, we're not talking about it because of people's age. We're talking about it because the different perspectives, and where I've seen things happen is, like, we make assumptions, right? We make assumptions that people have the same starting point or perspective that we have, and that's super dangerous just because of those really distinct differences in how we were raised, our backgrounds. COVID experience, where people were at in your life. What does belonging mean to you? There was I think it was I don't know if it was Gartner. There was a Gartner study that talked about like 4 trends of tension that you're seeing across organizations. Trust going both ways, the idea of productivity versus burnout, what's sustainable, um, flexibility, what does that mean? And I just think that the we make assumptions even for solutions, right? That to your point about there's no playbook for today. So if you were a successful leader, if you were a company that had a really amazing culture going into 2020, like it's different today. So if you haven't been intentional about that assessment and then kind of enrolling your leaders and your teams in that co-creation of kind of the today and the future, I think you're missing it because you can't you're it's dangerous to make those assumptions. I don't know if you're helping organizations with that kind of work as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I totally agree, right? I mean, culture ebbs and flows just like any relationship. I mean, I'll give an example to be personal. I've been married, it'll be 28 years.
Congratulations, that's aw your wife is amazing too, just so you know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But
I'm
I'm
sure you
not the
already knew.
same. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I like to think so, right? So, and not just to personalize it, but I mean, even in a relationship, I'm not the same cat I was 28 years ago, 5 years ago. We're constantly working on our relationship. Things change. We had kids. Now they're older kids, ebbs and flows. So I say that in terms of intentionality, like you're saying, the world changes, culture changes, everything changes. So how do you adapt? How do you pivot? What conversations do you have? Are really, really meaningful. And I love what you said about co-creation. I think that's where a lot of people miss the mark. If it's just from the ivory tower, top down, then it feels autocratic, right? And so the culture is, from sideways, front door, back door, all of the above. When people have their fingerprints on the culture, because I find that every human being, this is based on my work and research, that every human being wants the same 3 things at work. Those 3 things are we want to be seen, heard, and valued. Seen, heard, and valued. And it doesn't take a whole lot to democratize that. Now, I'm not asking leaders to go around and make speeches and stand on, Zoom calls and give out, motivational talks, but in your own sphere of influence, whether you manage a team of 10 or 100, what are you going to do to amplify that people feel seen, heard, and valued? right? How do you appreciate people? Do you give people a voice? Do you do all the talking? Are you the smartest person in every room? How do you democratize that? How do you share the wealth? How do you invest in the personal development? Things like that, again, which is intuitive to maybe you and I, is not so intuitive to everyone else. And sometimes just hold the mirror up and reminding people that it's not about you, it's about them. And then there's an opportunity here to create a better culture where people actually feel like they matter.
Yeah, 100%. The other lens that I'm seeing happen is if we try to lean in on that feeling, because those things that people want go to feelings, which are super important. But I've seen it a little misplaced sometimes if we weigh too heavy on that without the other side, which is around that personal accountability, right? People can feel seen and heard when they have the opportunity to contribute and they're expected to contribute and their contributions are recognized, right? So it's not just about the feeling, but it's also about like their own feeling of, I mean, we both have kids and we both have kids that have dealt with different things. And I learned that, sometimes helping isn't helping, right? Actually teaching and letting my daughter go through her own experiences and build her own confidence in doing so. And then being that witness with her on that journey of accomplishment was actually seeing her in a more powerful way than me kind of rah-rahing or as we went, if that makes sense. So I've been thinking a lot about those parallels between parenting and effective leadership in today's world.
No, no,
Uh,
I agree. I mean, I can't, I mean, not to use a crude analogy, but I mean, there's a lot of things we know to be true, but we don't do, right? So, um, it's hard as a parent sometimes. I can't go to the gym for my child. I can buy him the workout clothes. I can get him the gym membership, and I got to motivate him. But part of life is you got to do the work. And sometimes it's murky and it's uncomfortable and there's tension. But at the end of the day, to get to the other side, sometimes, I can't do the walk for you. I can coach you and I can inspire you. So in that way, I think the parallel to leadership is, and I find is, again, and I'll be brutally honest. I think sometimes leaders think that, culture is perks, parties, and pizza, right? Yeah, perks, parties, and pizza. So we'll just have Taco Tuesday, the food truck, the T-shirt, the rah-rah stuff, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, we don't have that every day, and the nuts and bolts of it is what we do day to day, how we show up for each other day to day. And I love what you said about accountability, because too often I think accountability is framed like it's to you. Accountability is for you, right? You want to be in a place where people are accountable, right? And so again, framing that, coaching that, and doing all of that and showing up, and that starts with the leader themselves.
100%. And just like our kids, they learn more from what we do than what we say. Your daughter's watching you go to the gym, and that's probably more powerful than you telling her 100 times to go to the gym or right? So it's that interesting modeling, walking the walk kind of a thing. So you shared a little bit about your courageous choices, and one of the things that we talk about is that feeling of fear or scared or excited, whatever those feelings are that lead up to before you did it. Can you tune in to the feelings that you might have been feeling the first time you shared publicly about your neurodiversity and share what that felt like to you and what made you decide to do it anyway?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I did it, I actually, I didn't realize that I had been compartmentalizing that, burying it. Like I didn't, it's almost like I put it in a suitcase and put it in, in a closet. So the first time that I did it, I got teary-eyed, a little scared. I mean, I was pretty emotional, I guess is what I'm saying. And then I was like, wow, oh, I didn't realize. I mean, it just kind of hit me from nowhere, because avoiding it didn't go away. And then I realized that just because you carry it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. I mean, it was huge for me. I was like, wow, okay. So, so I had to lean into that a little bit and kind of put Humpty Dumpty back together because there was some unmet trauma there that I'm like, okay, just because I'm an adult now doesn't mean that I don't have some challenges that I have to deal with. So I did it, and the fortunate thing for me, because I think sometimes we're our harshest critics. We beat ourselves up, right? And so at first I was a little bit embarrassed, and I'm like, "Oh my god, really? I'm crying, this is awkward." But then I had a couple people come up to me shortly after, and you've done talks, and you don't need 100 people, but I had 1 or 2 people come up, go, That was amazing. Thank you for humanizing that. Thank you for leaning into that and making vulnerability okay. And I was like, "Oh, all right. Okay." 'Cause I felt better, but then it was in that space sometimes, that gap or that chasm between what you think and where you are. And so a couple of different validations, and then I kinda leaned into the work, and then I was like, "Okay, so it's not just me. Then maybe if we made work so sterile, maybe we made more life so sterile and scripted that I wanna write about and speak about and research about the things that we don't talk about, that we all feel, but sometimes we don't put sunshine." Now I'm rambling, but I'm often reminded of my mother. She often said to me, now my mother was not formally educated. She just had a high school degree, but she had some of this wisdom that you can only get on a front porch, like a motherly type wisdom. And I remember her saying that sunshine is the best disinfectant,
Ooh, bring it out of the
right?
dark, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, mama, here we go. We're going to put some sunshine on this and we're going to clean it up. And so because of that, it's been my mission to constantly put myself in situations to not hide from it, lean into the work. And what I found by doing that, I come out the other side so much better, so much evolved.
Wow.
So
And you're having impact and helping others in that journey, which is really powerful too. Pretty incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I think your mom's advice is well taken. Bring those things out into light, and that's part of what bringing in you or anyone externally. Sometimes we see things that are maybe in the dark or under the rug or whatever that we all just keep walking by, right, in an organization because we've become used to it and we forgot that there wasn't supposed to be that pile under the rug, right? And so helping organizations navigate that. Is there, any story you'd like to share about, an organization where you've really helped drive either courage or effective leadership within their organization?
there's been a couple of situations that I think I'm really, really proud about. And I will say that the work is heavy. I mean, if you're doing the work, it's going to be heavy. Um, but a couple things that really, really come to mind. I think, too often with leaders, I think, and again, this is, again, the anecdote for me. I tell people instead of trying to boil the ocean, boil a pot of water. Start with yourself, right? Start with your sphere of influence. I'm not asking you in the whole organization to change everything because that's not how change works. You want to show up, you want to change things, change how you show up in it. First of all, that. And then share that journey with your team. Be vulnerable. Hey, I want to be a better version of me as we support the rest of 2025 or whatever. I'm going to be working on some things and then lay it out because that clearly creates a space for other people to do the same. It just starts real conversations so we don't have to play cake pretend. So, because of that, in terms of anecdote stories, I mean, I've landed in some amazing places that I never thought I would be. And one of those venues has been the ability to work with school districts. I'm not a former educator, never taught, never principal, never drove a bus. But school districts have cultures and they have people. And unlike corporations, they don't have the budget and the resources and all the other things. So regardless, I ended up in a lot of school districts and I found that work really, really meaningful because what I find is that if I can light up or help light up bus drivers, people in the cafeteria, paraprofessionals, teachers, guess what? It trickles down to the kids. And if the kids feel connected and valued and heard, guess what? And I've got a couple different stories. Kids start coming to school. Behavior issues stop. Test scores go up. Parents get more involved. And I've done a lot of corporate stuff, but the meaningful stuff that really resonates and I kind of sort of think about is some of the work I've done with school districts. Cause I'm like, wow, we're actually transforming lives here, but we're doing it because teachers are showing up just a little bit more engaged and the kids pick it up like a Wi-Fi signal that I matter. This work matters and I can do better.
The theme I'm hearing in your stories, both with leadership and in this work, is really the ripple effect, right?
Mm.
The having that impact with one person and then them changing, and by default, people are gonna change around them. The system is gonna start to shift. And I can't think of anything more impactful than doing that in schools and helping children, engage differently and see themselves differently and then obviously the impact that they'll have as throughout their lives as they grow. Pretty incredible. Well, you said there were a couple. Is there another one you're thinking of?
Yeah, yeah. And if I may, I'm just going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. Like just this week, I had an opportunity to do two keynotes at the Boys and Girls Club Leadership National Conference.
So fun. I love the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, well, they reached out and had an opportunity, and it kind of came full circle for me, Jamie, because I was a club kid.
I was too.
And I was
Yeah.
like, right, but I didn't really think, it's not top of mind. Is this part of your narrative or your story? And then I came full circle. So I had an opportunity this week to spend an opportunity in a room with folks who run those clubs from all over the country. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how much that was a pivotal moment. That was a place, a safe place where we could swim or play pool or basketball or tag. Now, I was a latchkey kid. So my parents both worked, right? So that was the place that mom or dad would drop me off during the summers. And I would hang around all day. And then they would pick me up at the end, on the way home. And then I'd go home. And I was like, wow, I forgot how my formative years were formed by that. So either way, sorry to go off on a tangent, but that just happened this week. And having those conversations and see the impact they're having at that level was amazing. And
It's kind of crazy that you share that story because I was a club kid. I was a Keystone part of the Keystone Club as I got into my high school. And I can recall, I think the first leadership development program I ever went to was with a Boys and Girls Club program, right? And those, yeah, which is really incredible. And those adults that are overseeing all those programs, right? Whether it's the gym or whatever, um, really have an impact on our lives. It's very similar. We haven't shared this part of our stories together, but I was also a latchkey kid. Both my parents were working, and so the club actually played a pretty significant part of my life. And the fact that we both share that, and then you had the opportunity. I've been to the national conference. Used to be on a board of a local branch in Tustin. But so that's an amazing conference, and the people that are doing that work are the ones that are having that exponential impact and really have committed their careers to making a difference in the lives of youth and in their communities, which is super incredible. So I love that you were there this week. I can't believe that it got to come up, and we haven't talked about that before. Pretty fun.
yeah, no, it was full circle moment for me. And I just felt like so safe and awesome. And the conversations were rich. And I mean, and it's hard, but it was just, no, no, no. It was just amazing group. And I was so excited to be there. So I tried to go off on that tangent, but it just, you're talking about things that really struck me personally. And that was like, I didn't realize how much of a big of an impact that made. But in terms of other organizations, I think that, I've impacted. I mean, I've worked with so many different organizations. I mean, I think, a couple come to mind, and I'll give a little bit of backstory. I've always thought that, and still do today, that well-being has to be part of the narrative. And so, for 15 years, I've always thought that, and I'm in a better place. I'll just be frank. I'm better when I feel better. I'm more creative. I'm more resilient. And so I realized I can't give what I don't have. So I say that because I've worked with a lot of organizations over the last 10 years. A few come to mind, but where we've actually made well-being a part of the strategy. So if it's really about outcomes, which everyone talks about, right? Whatever those outcomes may be, whether it's sales, retention, whatever it is, safety, whatever. Well, when I talk with leaders and say, if we can get people in a better place more days, not rah-rah, not Ferris Bueller's day off, not a happy hour. I'm not talking about that, not woo-woo, right? Just getting better, be kinder, more optimistic, nicer, more collaborative. Do you think outcomes improve? And everyone says yes. Okay, so let's make it part of the strategy. To your point, let's systematize it. What can we do to redo work? And I like to say, and I'm kind of corny, I don't know, I am, but are you familiar with Chip and Joanna in Waco, Texas?
Yes, I am.
So that's kind of sort of what I kind of see myself in workplace culture. I'm the Chip and Joanna guy. Right? So I kinda come in and I just say, "Look, we don't need to burn the house down. It just needs a little bit of a makeover." Right? You've been running that same playbook for 25 years and everything else has changes. Let's just do some subtle shifts. For example, how you start your meetings, how you end your meetings, how you onboard, right? All the little things. Because culture, as you know, Jamie, as well as anybody, culture starts from right through the interview process.
100%.
right? How you interview, who shows up, how you engage, what you communicate, all of the above. Those are little iterations of how you do it. And so just finding little iterations. So what I tell people is, I don't want to necessarily blow up the culture. I just want to give it a little bit of a makeover. And let's look for some intersections where we can integrate some best practices to systematize, operationalize, and make people feel an opportunity to feel heard, seen, and valued.
That's amazing. You used the word intentional before, right? And it's getting that
Mm.
intentional lens on your culture. You can help organizations get intentional about their culture so that it's going to drive what they're trying to drive as an organization and also be a great place to work in the meantime, by engaging those folks. So, I mean, it sounds like you do. So I'm going to just ask it anyway. But what advice do you have for leaders today?
Yeah. So advice. Wow. I mean, these are interesting times. I think in terms of the one thing that a couple things come to mind, I would say in terms of the leaders. Um, let's not be tone deaf again to the realities of the world. I just follow the data, to be honest. Anecdotes work, but where's the data? And if you look at the data, and you know it as well as I do, Jamie, burnout, loneliness, disengagement, right? So those are pretty three significant data points that people are not in a great place. So in terms of your organizational strategy, in terms of your own strategy, what are you going to do to address? How can you make people feel more connected? And there's this age-old argument going on right now, and I think we're all feeling it. Is it return to work? Is it hybrid? Is it remote? What is it? What's the cadence? How many days? What should they do when we're here? And I think in terms of what you should do as a leader, you don't have to figure it all out. You have resources available. You have people like you, Jamie, that can tap in expertise. You don't have to be a lone soldier on this, but you do have to become a student. And I would argue in terms of the one thing that you can do amongst all the uncertainty is take care of yourself, and so you can take care of your people. The other thing I would say is celebrate wins. One of our greatest addictions in the new normal is talking about all our problems. If you're not talking about the things that are winning or things that are successful, it's like winning doesn't happen here. Now, I'm not talking about giving out trophies for showing up on time, but if people are making incremental progress, then you need to celebrate it. And I'll give one more anecdote because I say this and I think it. If we had kids, which we do, but say we had small kids and they were struggling in school and they were getting the equivalent of 70s, 72 in arithmetic, and coming home every night, just upset, sideways, feeling less than. Well, if our child came home and went from a 72 to a 78, would we celebrate it?
100%.
Yes, of course we would, because it's progress. But too often we don't do that at work. And if you don't celebrate progress, it's really, really hard on the brain to continue to evolve, right? When we win, it fires off dopamine in the brain. It makes us feel better. We'll create more opportunities where you can get dopamine, feeling like people, there's an opportunity. Because too often it's either hero or zero. And that's really, really hard on humans.
I love that. And to your point about hybrid and remote and those things, we're not always in front of people for the day-to-day. I mean, I used to manage by like popping into people's offices, right? And I'm not doing that anymore. So I'm having to come up with new ways to do it. I had my team here yesterday and we actually I kind of went old school. So I don't think there's some green marbles on the desk behind me and there's a container and for certain things that we're trying to measure. Every time it happens, we're putting the marble in the jar and gonna do something fun when we get it. And I actually created that because I'm super forward looking. I'm wired for process improvement. But the negative side of that is that sometimes I forget to acknowledge that incremental progress or those wins. And so that's I literally just did that yesterday and it's to help me visually take a pause and just acknowledge that in a virtual hybrid type working team. So anyway, I love that. Devin, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Maybe we'll do it again sometime because I know you have a lot to share. You're always working on a new book and have great stories. So thank you for joining us and for your candor and for being so vulnerable, transparent, and inspirational. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. This is fantastic.
Thanks, Devin. Thank you for listening to The Courageous Choice. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review to help get the word out about the podcast. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future conversations. If you'd like to know more about gig talent, please visit gigtalentagency.com or email us at podcast@gigtalentagency.com. See you in the next episode.